are tides. The level of the ocean water rises and falls throughout the day. People can watch this happen at the beach. During one part of the day, the ocean water will rise and cover the beach. Later, the water level will fall and the beach will be uncovered again. These changes in ocean water level are called tides. Tides are the daily changes in the level of the Earth's water. The maximum rise of the water level at certain times of the day is called high tide. The maximum fall of the water level at certain times of the day is called low tide. How often do the tides change? A tide table shows 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day. The tides change about every 6 hours and 15 minutes. Water floods the beach slowly until high tide is reached. The incoming tide is called flood tide. Flood tide is the incoming rising tide. Then the water flows off the beach until low tide is reached. The outgoing tide is called ebb tide. Ebb tide is the outgoing or falling tide. The water level changes because of the tides. What motion of the Earth causes the tides to rise and fall twice each day? Looking up at the diagram of the tides, there are 2 high tides at points A and C. Halfway between A and C, there are 2 low tides at points B and D. The Earth turns on its axis once in 24 hours. As it turns, the tides change at every place on Earth. Suppose you are on the beach at point A. It will be high tide where you are. For somebody at point B, it is low tide. After 6 hours, the Earth will carry you around to point B. The high tide stays where it is at point A, under the moon. Where you are at point B, it is now low tide. 6 hours later, you will be at point C, and the tide will be high again. 6 hours after that, you will be at point D, and the tide will be low again. In the course of one day, each place on the Earth has 2 high tides and 2 low tides. The Earth's rotation causes the tide to rise and fall twice each day. Why doesn't the sun's pull affect the Earth's tides as much as the moon's pull? Which one has more pull? The sun and the moon both attract the Earth. The moon is the main cause of tides on Earth. The sun also affects our tides, but not as much as the moon. The moon is 380,000 kilometers away. The sun is 150 million kilometers away. Because of the sun's greater distance from the Earth, its pull on the Earth's water is weaker than the moon's. What happens during spring tides? Twice a month, the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon line up. This occurs during the new moon and during the full moon. At these times, the gravitational force of the sun is added to the gravitational force of the moon. When these forces combine, high tides are higher than usual. These higher tides are called spring tides. Low tides are not as low as usual. What happens during neap tides? During the moon's first and last quarter phases, the sun and the moon are at right angles to the earth. Their pulls on the earth's water act against each other. High tides are not as high as usual. These are called neap tides. Did you learn a lot today? Let's see how well you've learned the lesson for today. That's about all for this lesson. See you next time.